You weren't put here to hold everything together, but somewhere along the way, you started acting like you were. Like it was your responsibility to keep the peace, solve the conflict, make sure no one around you ever felt disappointed, angry, or uncomfortable. Not because someone asked you to, but because over time, you convinced yourself that if things go wrong, it must be your fault. So you step in, you smooth it over, you explain, you manage, you fix other people's moods, you fix conversations, you fix moments before they break, even when they were never yours to carry in the first place. But here's the thing no one ever tells you. Just because you can sense the tension doesn't mean it's your job to resolve it. You've become so good at reading the room, you forget to check in with yourself. You leave every interaction thinking, did I say the right thing? Did I hurt them? Did I make it better? But you never ask, did that feel good for me? You're trying to be the glue. But sometimes being the glue means you keep holding together things that were meant to fall apart. And the cost? You start confusing peacekeeping with peace. You start thinking silence means safety. You start feeling responsible for things that were never yours to carry. This video is your reminder that you don't need to fix everything. You don't need to step in. You don't need to carry the emotional weight for everyone else. You're allowed, right now, in this exact moment, to let things be. Let the conversation feel incomplete. Let the other person feel how they feel. Let the tension exist without jumping in to dissolve it. You are not the repair crew for every crack in the world. And when you stop trying to fix everything, you finally leave space for the truth to surface, the kind that doesn't need to be managed, only met. Most people who try to fix everything aren't doing it because they love chaos. They're doing it because somewhere deep down, they don't feel safe when things are out of order. So they step in, not just to help others, but to calm something inside themselves. They were the ones who learned early that if someone in the room was upset, it became their job to soften it. That if things got tense, they had to smooth it over. That if someone was angry, it was because they had done something wrong. So they grew up thinking that keeping everyone else okay was the only way they'd be okay. And now, they can't relax unless everything around them feels resolved. But life doesn't always give you resolution. Sometimes it gives you uncertainty, silence, distance, people who won't tell you what they're feeling. And if your default response is to fix it every time something feels wrong, then peace will always be out of reach. You don't need to fix your way into worth. You don't need to earn peace by performing emotional labor for everyone else. And you definitely don't need to be the one who holds everything together just so no one feels uncomfortable. Because here's what happens when you keep doing that. You become emotionally overdrawn. You start giving responses when no one's asking. You start explaining yourself in conversations that don't need explanations. You become hyper-aware of every shift in someone's tone, every pause, every sigh, and you build stories around it. Then you try to fix those stories before they've even become real. You live in anticipation mode, constantly managing potential problems instead of being present in the actual moment. And slowly, it chips away at you. You become exhausted, but can't explain why. You feel anxious around people, but still feel responsible for their emotions. You lose your own center, not in one dramatic moment, but in hundreds of small ones, where you chose harmony over honesty, caretaking over clarity, control over truth. But the truth? You don't owe everyone your emotional labor. You don't need to offer explanations for your silence. You don't need to step in every time there's tension in the air. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Not out of spite, not out of distance, but out of respect for yourself and for the space that lets things unfold naturally. Because not everything broken needs your hands on it. Some things are meant to crack open, some things are meant to fall, and some things are never meant to be your responsibility in the first place. Here's the part no one talks about. When you've been the fixer for so long, not fixing can feel like failure. You've built your identity around being the one who steps in, who knows what to say, who keeps everything from falling apart. You've worn that role like armor, and at times, it probably was your survival. It made you feel useful, needed, in control, but eventually, it becomes a cage. Because the longer you stay in that role, the more you start to forget who you were before it. What do you believe when you're not trying to convince someone else? What do you feel when you're not absorbing someone else's pain? What does your day look like when it isn't spent managing everything you fear might go wrong? Most people who constantly try to fix everything don't actually want control. They want safety. They want to feel like nothing unpredictable is about to happen. That if they're always alert, always available, always agreeable, maybe they won't get blindsided again. But here's the quiet truth. Being the fixer won't protect you. It won't stop life from being uncertain. It won't prevent people from misunderstanding you, leaving you, or hurting you. And it definitely won't bring you peace, because peace doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. Trusting that not every messy moment needs your intervention, that not every silence is a problem, that not every shift in energy means you did something wrong. Sometimes things feel off because they are. Sometimes people pull away because they're dealing with their own storms. Sometimes things break, and they're supposed to, but the fixer in you wants to grab the broom, sweep it up, patch it together, say the right thing, soften the edges, even when that process is quietly breaking you instead. So what happens when you stop? What happens when you choose to pause before reacting? When you decide not to chase that tension? When you let someone sit with their feelings instead of jumping in to carry them? At first, it might feel like abandonment, like guilt, like you're doing something wrong, but give it time. Eventually, that space, that discomfort turns into clarity, into emotional rest, into the realization that you're not abandoning anyone. You're just coming back to yourself. And what you'll find there isn't coldness. It's warmth you've been giving everyone else, but denying yourself. Something strange happens when you stop rushing to fix everything. At first, you feel exposed, like you're not doing enough, like you're abandoning your role, the one that made you feel needed, important, relevant. But then, in the silence that follows, something else begins to emerge. Something quieter. Something you haven't felt in a long time. Self-respect, not pride, not ego, but that quiet kind of respect that comes from finally showing up for you, from finally listening to your needs without shoving them aside to manage someone else's emotions, from finally noticing the tension in your chest and asking, what if I don't carry this today? You start seeing how much of your life has been shaped by overfunctioning. How many times you said yes, not because you wanted to, but because you couldn't stand the idea of someone being disappointed. How often you've rewritten your boundaries in real time, just to keep the energy in the room smooth. And when you stop doing that, even for a moment, you notice something else. Your body relaxes. Your voice gets clearer. You don't talk as much, but what you say carries more weight. You don't show up everywhere, but when you do, you're actually there. Because now you're not performing peace, you're choosing it. And you begin to ask different questions. Not, how do I fix this? But, does this even need to be mine? That one shift, that one question, begins to change everything. Because it teaches you the difference between being supportive and being self-abandoning. You can still be kind without bending over backward. You can still love people without managing their emotions for them. You can still be present without carrying every broken piece to your side of the table. You begin to understand that fixing isn't love. Fixing is often fear, wearing a helpful face. And when you stop acting from fear, when you stop reacting from guilt, when you stop jumping in to soothe what someone else hasn't even asked you to hold, you create space. Space to observe, space to breathe, space to actually feel what you feel, instead of constantly mirroring what someone else is going through. And in that space, your clarity returns. Not the kind that says, now I know what to say to fix it, but the kind that says, now I know what I need, and I'm allowed to honor it. Because the fixer in you was never bad. They were just tired. Tired of being the emotional filter. Tired of being on call for people who never asked how you were doing. And you're allowed to stop. You're allowed to let things be uncomfortable without rushing in. You're allowed to sit in the quiet and wait, not for the perfect words, but for the truth to rise on its own. There's a kind of freedom you don't even realize you've been craving, until you stop trying to fix everything. It's not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks. It's quiet, almost unremarkable at first. But it's real, and it's powerful. It shows up in small ways, like being in a conversation and realizing you don't need to over-explain. like walking away from a tense moment without feeling like you're supposed to repair it, like saying, "I don't know," and being okay with the silence that follows. You start to feel safe in spaces that used to activate your nervous system, not because the world changed, but because you're no longer trying to carry it all. You've stopped walking into every room scanning for tension, stopped micromanaging people's reactions, stopped assigning meaning to every shift in tone, every look, every pause, and what fills the space where that anxiety used to live. Peace, not perfection, not clarity 100% of the time, but a softness, a sense that you're allowed to exist, even when things are unresolved, because that's what fixing robs you of. Your right to simply be. Be confused, be still, be unsure, be whole, even when nothing around you is. You realize you can love someone and not fix them. You can show up for someone without managing how they receive you. You can be a good person without being a constant emotional safety net. That's real maturity. Not tightening your grip when things feel unstable, but loosening it and trusting yourself to navigate whatever comes next without losing who you are. And from that place, you begin to rebuild your emotional life differently. You speak slower because you're no longer rushing to make sure everything lands well. You listen better because you're not mentally rehearsing the perfect response. You feel more, not because you've become more emotional, but because you've stopped numbing yourself with problem solving. You begin to understand that emotional safety isn't created by controlling your surroundings. It's created by trusting your ability to stay grounded, even when things around you are messy. Fixing taught you how to survive, but letting go teaches you how to live in uncertainty without panic, to live in presence without performance, to live in relationships without trying to earn your place through effort. You stop doing things to feel in control and start doing things that make you feel at home in your own body again. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. When you stop fixing everything, you start seeing everything more clearly, including your relationships. Some people were never really connected to you. They were connected to what you do for them, to your ability to smooth things over, absorb their chaos, translate their moods, carry the weight they refuse to acknowledge. And the moment you stop doing that, the dynamic changes. Some people grow with you, some distance themselves, some get uncomfortable, because without your emotional labor, they're now responsible for facing what you used to shield them from. That can be painful. It can feel like loss, but it's not a loss, it's a reveal. You finally see who values you for your presence, not just your usefulness. You see which relationships were built on mutual respect, and which ones relied on your exhaustion. And the longer you stay outside the fixer role, the more your energy returns to you. You're no longer drained after every interaction. You're not constantly replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you could have done more. You stop measuring your day by how much you kept under control. You begin measuring it by how much you felt connected to yourself. And that's when your identity starts shifting. You stop seeing yourself as the one who always has to carry, the one who always shows up, even when they're falling apart, the one who earns love through being low maintenance, emotionally intuitive, endlessly accommodating. You realize you don't want to be easy to love if it means disappearing in the process. You don't want to be seen as the strong one if it means no one ever asks how you're really doing. You want to be known, fully, honestly, not just for the peace you bring to others, but for the truth you're learning to bring to yourself. And once that realization hits, you start showing up differently. You take your time, you answer slower. You ask yourself, is this mine to fix? Or am I stepping in because it's familiar? You begin to notice that your silence doesn't have to be filled. Your discomfort doesn't have to be resolved right away. And your emotions don't need to be repackaged into something softer just so other people can digest them. You stop negotiating your needs down just to stay likable. You stop rearranging your boundaries every time someone flinches, because you're not here to keep things smooth. You're here to keep things real. And when you finally stop fixing, not just other people, but your own constant fear of being misunderstood, you start reclaiming the energy you used to give away without thinking. Not out of bitterness, but out of balance. Out of knowing that you matter just as much as the peace you've always been so quick to protect. You don't have to carry it all. You don't have to fix what was never yours. If this spoke to you, drop a comment. I'm done fixing. And if you need more reminders like this, subscribe. Quiet Truth, every week, just for you.